As China's largest and most significant ancient palace, the Forbidden City is its best preserved cultural treasure. In the Forbidden City's inner courtyard is the Hall of Mental Cultivation, where the Qing Emperor lived and worked. Opposite the building stands this jade disc. When the emperor attended state affairs, this jade disc would be visible from the throne. The purpose of this jade disc was to remind the emperor to be a role model of Junsu. In essence, jade is said to be in perfect harmony with the temperament of Junsu, or exemplary person. 2,500 years ago, Confucians considered Junsu to be the personification of jade. They associated the qualities of jade with the fine virtues of a Junsu figure. Jade's warm glow represents Junsu's benevolence, never show off. The contrast between jade's solid structure and soft appearance represents wisdom, replete with knowledge but willing to listen. Jade ware, without sharp edges, represents Junsu's rectitude and integrity. Make oneself useful, but do no harm to others.
So Confucius, he changed the meaning of the term Junsu, which we can translate today as exemplary person. But before him, what it meant to, if you were a Junsu, it was depended on family background, much closer to Western ideas of aristocratic ideas. If you're born into a rich and powerful family, then you're a Junsu. He says, no. To be a Junsu, an exemplary person, you have to have above average ability and above average virtue.
In China, this Junsu spirit has been passed down from generation to generation, influencing Chinese civilization over the centuries. Like the ancient Silk Road, Chinese people are well known for their trading skills. But in the classic Chinese era, merchants, no matter how rich they might have been, had a status that was considered as beneath those of peasants and tradesmen. Such merchants were prevented from working in government office, and their sons were ineligible to participate in scholarly examinations to become government officials, who were considered the elites at that time. But the latter years of the Ming or Qing dynasty saw substantial population and economic growth due to increasing numbers of scholars turning to commerce as a means to support themselves. At the same time, in the business world, a new word started to attract public attention, Ru Shang, meaning Confucius merchants. A Confucius merchant carried on the Junsu spirit, in that moral management justifies the pursuit of wealth. By the same token, a Confucius merchant positions righteousness before profit to achieve harmony with others. Confucian merchants reinterpreted the relationship of righteousness and profit from one of opposition to one of duality, although their revision did not at the time displace mainstream Confucian ideological disapproval of the pursuit of profit through business. In fact, such duality thinking was never absent in Chinese culture, exemplified by yin and yang. In describing the interconnection between yin and yang, the Book of Change, or I Ching, the oldest of the Chinese classics, gives a vivid account of Junsu through its famous saying, "The attitude of earth is receptivity. Thus do leaders support people with rich virtue." Those words serve as a great refinement of the Chinese spirit, conveying the general approval of Junsu. According to Confucianism, a Junsu, or exemplary person, helps provide moral leadership. In other words, Junsu can balance or coordinate relations between all things. In terms of a society, a Junsu helps affect others via humane conduct, thus promoting harmony and cooperation, or he-he. When do we first see in writing the use of he-he in relationship to I Ching? Because we're now reading back into I Ching, seeing he-he there, But when did that actually occur? When was the first time we can say that he was written down as a concept, as a way of interpreting the earlier book of changes?
和合这两个词
He first appeared in the book Guyu, Speeches of the States. In the recorded text, King Yo of Zhou tricked the lords with beacon fires at the end of the Western Zhou dynasty. When the Zhou dynasty was on the decline, Shibo and Duke Hun of Jing spoke. Duke Hun asked Shibo whether the Western Zhou dynasty could last. Shibo did not think so. The nation was doomed given the status quo. Shibo said the ancestors of the Shang dynasty ensured he in 5 relations that secured a stable and harmonious life for the people. This is where he first appeared. He in 5 relations means the father should be faithful, the mother should be affectionate, the old brother friendly, the young brother respectful, and son filial.
只有孝。
为什么你研究关于和合？
Professor Jeong Lee at Renmin University is the founder of the study of harmony and cooperation. For the past 3 decades, he has been focused on depicting the idea of harmony and cooperation. According to Professor Zhang, the character he, or harmony, is a simpler version of the ancient he. The character was found in inscriptions on bones or tortoise shells as early as the 11th century BCE. The upper left part of the character is a triangle, meaning gathering in ancient Chinese. The lower left represents an ancient musical instrument called a panpipe. The right part is another musical instrument similar to a harp. The second he implies the folding of upper and lower lips with an extended meaning of convergence, combination, integration, and cooperation. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, said that music is a universal expression or universal law or Tao. In this sense, he represents an ideal combination of different elements in the making of a piece of harmonic music.
和合两个字
In the ancient Chinese language, though he was 2 characters, the Chinese see them as one phrase. When people in southern China get married, they put up he portraits, meaning Bai Nian Hao He, a harmonious union lasting 100 years. In the financial and business sector, people value he qi sheng chai, meaning harmony brings wealth. Chinese people say jia he wan shi xing. That is, if the family lives in harmony, all affairs will prosper.
To help me understand the meaning of he, Professor Zhang suggests I should do as Chinese do. So I go to a local Beijing restaurant and dive into one of my favorite Chinese dishes, Pao Chicken. Nothing exemplifies Chinese tradition better than Chinese cuisine. It is said that Chinese cuisine goes back as far as Chinese culture does, if not farther. Authentic Pao Chicken embodies multiple layers of flavor. The first bite tastes sweet and sour. Then you feel the salty delicacy, followed by a hint of pepper. Lastly, the aftertaste combines the fragrance of hot peppers and the ma, or numb, spicy, hot taste of Chinese prickly ash seasoning. Legend has it that when he was young, the inventor of Pao Chicken, Ding Gong Bao, accidentally fell into a body of water. He couldn't swim, but was saved from drowning by a passerby. The boy grew up and eventually became a high-ranking court official in Sichuan province during the Qing dynasty. One day, to express his gratitude, he decided to visit the family of the man who had saved his life. While in the family home, Ding ate a flavorful dish featuring sliced chicken, peanuts, and hot and spicy Sichuan peppercorns. He thought this dish was so delicious that he persuaded the family chef to give him the recipe.
I've always thanked Ding Gong Bao for making the dish known to the outside world. And I've always admired the chef who combined all these complementary or even opposing flavors so harmoniously.
It's the dishes that make a meal. What makes a dish tasty? The same chicken may taste quite differently under different cooks. In the spring and autumn and warring states period, Duke Jing of Qi once told Yan Ying that if a meal is water plus water, then it would certainly taste bad. Onion, ginger, garlic, vinegar, sauce, salt. Only by adding something salty and something spicy together can we have a tasty meal. The ingredients are not enough. We must also have a highly skilled cook. The duration and degree of cooking must be proper. A certain balance is needed. The essence of he-he is to acknowledge the differences and even contradictions between different things, and then make proper adjustments.
The Confucian idea of harmony is not just unity or order that matters. It's also respect for diversity, because one of the most famous expressions from the Analects of Confucius is exemplary persons should value harmony but not uniformity. In Chinese, it's 君子和而不同. That's known by almost every Chinese intellectual today. And really the idea here is that to have a harmonious society, it means having peaceful order, but also means respecting diversity. And it's not just a matter of tolerating diversity, but if you have diversity, it produces a better society from a kind of ethical view and also from an aesthetic view.
Diversity is the first element in he-he, harmony and cooperation. But the key is not to maintain diversity, but to nurture and adjust it so new properties could emerge. This is the key to the success of Pao Chicken and to Chinese cuisine in general. The smooth harmonies and piquant contrasts in Chinese food are said to be more than simply the products of special recipes and personal enterprise. They are an expression of assumptions about life itself. And this idea of harmony and contrast proved to be very long-lasting. Some 1,800 kilometers away from Beijing stands Jiangyan Dam in Chengdu, Sichuan province. The dam is an ecological engineering feat, originally constructed around 256 BCE by the state of Qin as an irrigation and flood control project. The astonishing fact is that after more than 2 millennia, the project is still in use today. During the Warring States period, people who lived along the banks of the Min River were plagued by annual flooding. To solve the problem, the Qin Emperor commissioned Li Bing, the governor of Chengdu. Li Bing proved to be an expert hydrologist and irrigation engineer. He discovered that the river was swelled by fast-flowing spring melt water from the local mountains that burst the banks when it reached the slow-moving and heavily silted stretch below.
Li
Bing had many choices, the simplest being to build a dam to block the flow of water. But he did not. Dams would destroy what nature beholds for us. In that case, huge damage would be incurred. We know of many dams in the world, and while they provide us with benefits, they still cause environmental harm, including a lot of antiquity and beautiful scenery. Instead, Li Bing built 3 projects to divert water from Minjiang River. The diverted water flowed into the inner river, and the original river channel was the outer river. How did he control the currents? Well, he built a well-functioning weir, divert excessive inner river water to the outer river. In this sense, it completely followed the laws of nature, serving as an irrigation ditch. From this perspective, Li Bing's greatness lies in his being able to seek a balance among different factors with a big picture in mind, rather than eliminating differences. In short, it is harmony between man and nature.
Appreciating he-he, holding diversity within harmony, Chinese philosophy believes that everything derives from a state that allows or enables conflicting views to coexist in peace. But even in that sense, harmony and convergence are not static. Rather, it is a dynamic process that evolves from contradiction and win-loss extinction to balance and win-win cooperation, a process during which all things live and grow organically. Chinese philosophy requires that people must preserve this balance. One of them is Dr. Liang Ke-wei. Dr. Liang is a Chinese medicine practitioner. He is also a Tai Chi master. Every day he practices Tai Chi, a kind of traditional shadowboxing or like a slow, meticulous martial art. According to Chinese philosophy, Tai Chi helps harmonize the Qi and thus helps balance the yin and yang of different organs. The same philosophy applies to Dr. Liang's treatments. What's the relationship between Chinese medicine on the one hand and Chinese philosophy on the other?
The concept of he-he means cooperation and harmony, which represents the guiding principle of Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine enjoys its holistic view and worldview, which means our bodies coordinate with the environment in the universe.
To try to appreciate how he-he works in practice, I decide to give it a try myself. What does it mean for the body to be balanced and for the organs to be balanced? That sounds almost pre-scientific in terms of an analysis. So how do we understand the concept of balance in our biological systems?
The concept of balance can be summarized by a principle used by Chinese medicine. First, reduce excess while supplementing insufficiency. And second, at different stages from young to old age, our bodies aim for different kinds of balance. This is how Chinese medicine looks at our organism, like the 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Cold, hot, warm, and cool are different. How should our bodies adjust and what means are needed in applying treatments? Requires a holistic view. For example, swelling in your neck and shoulder is caused by stagnancy of qi and stasis of blood. I use acupuncture to stimulate blood circulation that carries away the extra yang qi. The balance of yin and yang, to put it simply, is reducing excess while supplementing insufficiency. It's like a seesaw. We apply treatment to restore our body's balance.
In fact, Chinese people say that not only do they seek harmony and cooperation from their inner world, but also with the outer world. Professor Daniel Bell is Dean of the School of Political Science and Public Administration at Shandong University and Professor at Tsinghua University. As an expert on Chinese intellectual history, Professor Bell says that understanding he-he is essential for understanding China's policies. Generations of Chinese leaders, certainly President Xi Jinping, like to talk about the policies that they have, both domestic and international, as being rooted in Chinese culture, civilization, history, philosophy. I'd like to get in depth on that, and what are the true antecedents of that historical precedent?
Well, when Chinese intellectuals talk about history, I think it's very much alive in a way that is not necessarily true when Westerners talk about history. For example, when we studied Plato in university, we didn't ask, how to implement Plato today or what Plato means. Or when we studied the Middle Ages, we didn't think about, how the Middle Ages might influence the way that we think or the way that we ought to think today. But when Chinese intellectuals, including political leaders, invoke history and philosophical concepts rooted in the past, I think it's very much alive in a way that's not true in the West.
What are some specific cases of that in history? Because that seems pretty important.
Well, sometimes in the Tang Dynasty, the rulers would allow Taoists and Confucians and Buddhists argue among themselves, and as a way of having for more, again, correcting mistaken views. Or there were also institutions in imperial history. In English, the term is the censorate, where it was Confucian-educated public officials who had the explicit task of arguing against what they considered to be mistaken policies. I mean, it was a very dangerous job, often, many paid with their lives, but it was an institution that allowed for that to flourish.
China says that traditional Chinese culture subtly influences its national interests, that the concept of harmony in traditional Chinese values provides key ideas for China's foreign policy. Professor Jeong Lee suggests that China's adherence to the principle of peaceful coexistence is part of the country's endeavor to seek harmony but not uniformity. For example, China asserts that its Belt and Road Initiative, building much-needed infrastructure throughout the developing world, does not seek to export Chinese ideology. Instead, it may help create a global environment that allows political diversity. And by recognizing and appreciating diversity, humanity can generate new development and new growth. In 2018, at the 18th Shanghai Cooperation Organization Qingdao Summit, President Xi Jinping spoke about harmony and cooperation.
We should respect each other's choice of development path and accommodate each other's core interests and major concerns. We should enhance mutual understanding by putting ourselves in others' positions and boost harmony and unity by seeking common ground and setting aside differences. This will enhance the coercion and appeal of our organization.
How about in conducting international relations? For example, President Xi has a series of prescriptions. Win-win cooperation, a shared community, international community with a shared future, joint consultations, which implies that even if China is bigger than some other countries, that there's mutual benefits. Are those kinds of characteristics which seem rooted in the kinds of philosophical traditions, particularly Confucianism, are those significant differences than what you traditionally find in the West?
Well, in some ways, yes. The concern for future generations is very central now to Chinese foreign policy on a global level. And I think that hasn't been...
Climate change.
On climate issues like climate change, or a way of thinking about artificial intelligence so that it's beneficial to humans. And I think those issues are very much global in nature, and I think there's more of that concern, obviously, now in China compared to, well, to the current U.S. administration. But the hope is that eventually other societies will have, especially major powers, will have similar outlooks.
The application of Confucianism in terms of interpersonal relationship among human beings seems to have started as an issue of governance within a state in Confucius' time, but it is now applied very broadly. It's in the family, it's between friends, it's between elements of society, it's between the people and the ruling governing power, and it's also applied interstate between different nations. So how do you see the hierarchy of Confucian thinking in terms of this these broad applications?
Confucius famously claimed that the way of realizing humanist benevolence is to find analogy from what is near at hand. So how do I learn to care about my countrymen, right? Most of them are strangers to me. I learn to care about them by first learning to care about my family members. And then if I can just, have a sense of, empathy or sympathy, it can push this idea outward. Gradually, I can embrace all people in my state, maybe eventually, all people in the world.
that the Confucian tradition, at least in part, it drives China's interest today in terms of being concerned about future generations and other countries, something like that.
So the basic Confucian view about international relations or about the world is that at the end of the day, there should be a global order which is peaceful and also respectful of diversity. And that still informs the current foreign policy to a certain extent. I mean, there's lots of things wrong with China. We can criticize the country's foreign policy, but they haven't gone to war since 1979. Compare that to other major powers. It's quite an impressive achievement. And if that's moving not just from respect for peace, but for respect for diversity and also for more active concern for future generations and for the environment, then that's all to the good. Why should we criticize that?
He-he, harmony and cooperation, describes idealized relations among different segments of society that have potential for conflict. Harmony implies differences. If everything or everyone were or thought the same, harmony would not make sense. If uniformity, no need for cooperation. Considering China's long history, harmony and cooperation is not freshly coined political jargon, but a philosophical tradition. Thousands of years ago, Chinese carved the character he, which means harmony and peace, on tortoise shells. And Confucius expounded the philosophical concept of harmony without uniformity, meaning that while the world is replete with differences and contradictions, the righteous man should seek balance to achieve harmony. Given China's large area, vast population, and diverse interests, it has been difficult to find common ground. Thus, China was fertile soil in which the ideal of harmony and cooperation could flourish. There is contemporary relevance. Given the complexity of domestic and international issues, China says it seeks to apply harmony and cooperation. Domestically, for example, given severe socioeconomic imbalances, Eastern, highly developed regions cooperate with Western, less developed regions, such as Shanghai sending doctors to Yunnan province and training Yunnan doctors in Shanghai. Internationally, the Belt and Road Initiative, building infrastructure in poor countries, exemplifies cooperation in seeking a more harmonious world. This is not to say that harmony and cooperation is a magic formula that can solve all problems. Rather, to China, harmony and cooperation is a universal principle that can contribute to prosperity within countries and peace among countries, thus enriching the global commons. That's closer to China.